everyone, this is Ebony and welcome to my private studio. Today is a beautiful day, so I hope you are enjoying your day so far. Today is my part 2 of how to learn music fast, voice version. Now, my last video, I specifically talked about how to learn piano music fast, and essentially voice music is going to be kind of similar. In the grand scheme of things, when you are learning music for any instrument, you want to deconstruct that music. So we're going to start with tip 1, which is the easiest tip of all. Listen to the music repeatedly. Now, I'm someone with a classical background, so it's kind of frowned upon to rely on this tip, but I don't really care. Chris and I created this channel in order to help people of all levels. And many people who are beginners do not know how to read music, don't really know the concept of rhythm for the most part. And so we want to make sure that we're making this accessible to everyone. And I want to stress with this tip that not only do I believe that beginners should be listening to their music repeatedly, but professionals should be as well. It doesn't matter if you're trying to learn Watermelon Sugar or Into the Unknown or O Titre Nicht. Listening to quality recordings of these songs help you get a combination of things that you need to learn for the song all at one time. You are hearing the rhythm of the melody, you are hearing what's happening in the instrumental, you are hearing the text and how the singer sings the text, as well as you're learning the notes. Now, for the emerging artist, professional singer, or someone who is training classically, this can have a double-edged sword to it, because if you are primarily just listening to your music to learn it, then some singers may change a couple of things rhythmically or musically, or they may have mistakes that you end up adopting from just listening to them. But that's why we have a couple other tips to give you, so you won't have to solely rely on listening to a recording. You'll find that if you're listening to your song multiple times a day before you go to bed, while you're doing other tasks, that your brain is registering that information and it is storing it. And so it helps you retain some of the information that you're hearing on the music. Tip 2 is practice the words. Now, for the most part, the words and the rhythms are going to be kind of hand in hand, especially for a beginner. For a professional person, you would actually go through the text and speak it very naturally, especially when you're talking about text in other languages. You want to get a grasp of how to naturally speak this to someone in person, and then, put in the rhythm that they have in the song. For beginning singers who primarily focus on commercial music, you won't have to really worry about differentiating the rhythm and the text, because most of the music that you are going to be singing is going to be in your first language. So for beginners, you would look up the lyrics and start speaking your text in rhythm. If there are passages that go by really quickly in the song that you can't quite get rhythmically, then specifically just speak that line over and over again without adding the rhythmic aspect. Make sure you're able to articulate and pronounce the words before trying to kind of force the rhythmic pattern on it. For professionals, this distinction kind of is a must, because if you start working with the text and the rhythm at the same time, you are going to get tripped up when you have, more complex rhythms or complex elisions depending on the type of language you are trying to sing in. This is an important step, because if you can't speak the words, you can't sing the song. Singers essentially do a lot of multitasking. We are using our instrument, it is in our body, so we are trying to produce sound, we are trying to spit out text with rhythm, with musicality, on top of conveying a message and really giving some type of stage performance. To kind of go ham right off top doesn't help you as much, because you are going to pick up bad habits, you're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes are going to be solidified in your practice. Tip 3, pluck out them notes. Something that helps me learn music fast and correctly is listening to the music, going through the text and rhythm, but also plucking out notes in specific sections that I'm having issues with, that I'm not completely sure I'm singing it right based off of just listening to the music. Plucking the notes out, or really taking a section that you struggle with, and slowing it down musically is going to help you a lot. It's also kind of a double checking method, proofreading method, if you will, where if you're going through the music and you have a certain section that you're not 100% on, it's good to be able to pluck that section out so you can be secure and then practice that specific section with those plucked out notes. Once you have that section down, then you can add it in the grand scheme of things or add it in context with the rest of the music. Tip 4, tap out that rhythm. So like I said earlier in the video, beginning students 9 times out of 10 are going to be practicing both the rhythm and the text at the same time. But professional singers and emerging artists, they do have to make sure that they make that distinction of practicing specifically the rhythm of their lines or the text. So many times the first thing I'm actually looking at is rhythm. Once I have the rhythm down, then I decide to really go through the text and then try to put everything together like that. But rhythm is so important because when you have complex rhythms in music, like for example, I am recording an opera for a composer who's written something, and that music is not recorded anywhere. I am going to be the original recording. So essentially, I'm given the sheet music, a MIDI recording, and I have to make music with it. Because of this, I'm very careful about how I learn it because there's no other recordings. But since I'm getting paid to do it, I don't have all day, all week, all month to be sitting there trying to learn this music for forever. And not that the composer that has commissioned me is rushing me, but if I want to make more consistent money, then I have to make sure that I'm consistently learning the music at a pace where I'm getting paid consistently. And that's just an example if you're learning something that is new, that isn't recorded. But a lot of music that I know my peers and up-and-coming students and beginners are learning, most of it has been recorded a couple of times before. And hopefully, like I said earlier, there is a high-quality recording of a professional performing it to help you kind of get a gist of the music. So many times, if you're listening to that music, that rhythm is not coming completely from scratch, but the sections that you do struggle with the rhythm, you can go back in and double check and really iron those sections out. And I want to stress that rhythm is as important as the notes. With any instrument, you can know all of the notes, but if you don't have the correct rhythm, it's not the song. And when you're talking about singing, text is as equally as important as the rhythm and the notes. Text is super important because you have to make sure that people understand you and that you are conveying a message that relates to others. Now, I will say that it's a bit easier to do that if you're singing songs in your native language, but if you are someone who is learning a variety of songs in different languages, that's something that you do have to think about. Tip 5 is just like in the piano video. You have to make sure you craft out a good practice schedule. Now with piano, you can practice for an extended amount of time without really getting like physically tired. But with voice, you have to be careful because there's definitely a time limit. Most of the muscles that help produce sound are going to be okay for the most part. You're going to be tired, but you want to be specifically careful about your vocal cords. Your vocal cords are very small muscles, so you definitely don't want to overuse them or overwork them because that will create damage in the long run. I would say if you're a beginning singer, I would not sing past 30 minutes a day to be careful. If you are a musician in training, then I would bump that up to like an hour of singing nonstop. And if you are a professional singer, I would say to cap off your singing like straight through at an hour and 30 minutes. The reason why that distinction is being made is because beginners often don't have the tools and don't necessarily know how to work all their muscles to safely sing for a long period of time. Usually a professional singer, whether you are a commercial singer that tours or a classical singer that often has to produce full-blown opera roles, you are more trained and have the ability to sing for a long period of time safely if you were trained correctly. Now, that doesn't mean that you can only practice for 30 minutes. or you can only practice for an hour and so on. You can practice for as long as you want, but you shouldn't sing straight for more than that amount of time. Practicing also includes practicing the text, practicing the rhythm, plucking out your notes, and so on. And on top of that, practicing all of your technical things like breathing. Not only is the amount of time important, but how often you do is important. So if you only have time once a week, that's fine. If you want to beef it up to 3 times a week or 5 days a week, that's even better. And what time of day kind of matters too, because as I said in the piano video, if you have the ability to practice right before bed, that's going to be better because you're able to kind of sleep on that information and your brain is able to soak it up right before bed, and things start to click a little bit easier the next day. But I understand as a singer, especially if you're living in shared spaces, how singing at night can be stressful. And if that's the case, of course, try to practice at a time where people won't be complaining on you. But if you have the ability to practice at night, I definitely suggest doing that right before bed so that information can make sense to you the next day. Alright guys, so those are my tips on how to learn music fast, voice edition. I hope these tips were helpful and informative. I also want to make a note that you don't have to practice specifically at home. You can definitely practice in your car, at work. I've definitely done it. So don't feel constrained to have to wait till you get home to do these tips to help you learn your music. Even if you're trying to practice technique, as a singer we have the luxury of taking our instrument everywhere we go. So anytime you have a spare moment, or if you're in an area that you can safely practice, do that. Alright guys, so as I stated earlier, our How to Learn Music Fast piano video came out last week. The Patreon got it a week prior, and so I want to stress that make sure that you are joining the studio at Patreon. If you are at Patreon and on YouTube, you are getting content weekly, consistent content, exclusive content, and early access to YouTube content. You also get more intimate access to us where you can ask us questions and participate in polls that help us create even more content on Patreon. We have tiers as low as $2 a month, not much at all, for this expansive music education content. Make sure to follow us on our social medias because we are going to be posting more content on them as well. Of course, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Go ahead and share our video to people you think might be interested. Make sure to hit the bell button so you know exactly when these videos drop. And I'll see you next time. Bye.